Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 2 of our currently ongoing series, How Expensive is Life in Australia in 2025? And in today's episode, I'm going to discuss about the cost of living in Australia of the most commonly used items at this point in time. So number one, and the biggest one on the list would be groceries. So this is something which has seen an insane amount of inflation here in Australia in the last few years. And this is also the most important because this affects everyone and it's relevant to everyone that consumes food on a regular basis, which is pretty much all of us. A recent report suggests that on an average, Australians are spending roughly about $208 per week. Of course, this number varies from state to state, from suburb to suburb, and also strongly affected by the number of people that you have in your household. For New South Wales, it's the highest, and that can go as high as $212, whereas for South Australia, that is the lowest, and that's about $186. For our household of two, we roughly spend about $100 to $130 per week on our groceries. Number two is the housing. So housing cost is probably the most significant factor for our expenses these days, and that is also true regardless of which part of the country you live in. Housing costs are also significantly gets affected by the close proximity to city, beaches, and universities, as these are the most common hotspots where the housing is typically the most expensive in any city. So at present in 2025, the average median rent for a house in Australia is about $650 per week. On the other hand, for a unit or an apartment, that cost is close to $630 per week. While comparing the housing cost, you also always have to remember that this significantly varies by which state you live in, which city you are living in, also which suburb are you living in. Just to give you an idea, the average rent for a place in Sydney at present is $775 and it's close to $660 per week here in Perth. Of course, you also have to keep in mind that these prices are only the rent prices. They do not include additional cost of things like house and content insurance and also any kind of strata fee that you might be paying in terms of maintenance of your common spaces and areas. Number three is the utilities. So utility costs are also quite severe here in Australia for water, electricity, Wi-Fi, and everything else. So we'll start with the water cost. On an average, the water bills are close to $272 per quarter here in Australia. This figure is cheapest for WA and highest for Tasmania. For us personally, we pay a close to $150 per month, and clearly we are on the higher side of the average. In terms of electricity cost, an average Australian is currently paying $125 per month on electricity. For us, that is close to $120 to $140 per month. The next bill in this category is the gas bill. So on an average, Australians pay roughly around $203 per quarter. Now, these will definitely be higher for the states that are significantly more cooler compared to the more warmer states, which is also true because the highest gas bills are for Victorians and they are paying about $237 per quarter. Our gas bill is close to around $30 per month. The next expense in this category is the Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi for Australians is roughly on an average is about $75 per month. For us in our household personally, this is about $70 a month and it's a fixed rate. So this does not get affected by our usage or the consumption of internet that we do at home. The final one in this category would be phone bills. So phone bills don't necessarily have an average because they significantly vary by different kind of providers, or if you're looking for domestic calls, international calls, or the amount of data that you are after, and this will vary from person to person. For me personally, this is about $300 that I pay on an annual basis, and I suggest that if you're looking to save some money, to go for 12-month plans instead of monthly plans. Our fourth category is the transportation costs. Now, if you have a car, fuel cost will significantly vary again from which state do you live in and also the amount of kilometers that you drive every week, every month, or every year. For us, just for petrol, we pay around $50 to $60 per week. The Australian average is about $73 per week. And this price is only for the fuel. It does not include anything like insurance, permits, parking tickets, or tolls. Another big expense if you have a car is a car insurance that you regularly pay on an annual basis. The car insurance rates significantly vary on what kind of vehicle you own, where do you live, and also what kind of places do you travel to. For our car, we pay somewhere around $800 to $1,000 per year for our car insurance. Now, if you don't own a car and just regularly use public transportation, unfortunately, the situation is not better even on that side, because at present, Australia is the third most expensive country in the world in terms of public transportation cost. It lies just after Switzerland and Netherlands. At present, on an average, Australians are paying $40 per week for public transportation, and that is close to just a little over $150 a month, which is certainly not cheap. These costs are significantly higher in bigger cities like Sydney and Melbourne, also Brisbane, whereas it's much cheaper in Darwin, Hobart, and Canberra. Number 5 is the health related cost. Now, this is also something that will be significantly affected by what sort of consultation, treatment, or advice are you looking for. But in general, a standard 20-minute GP consultation will cost you somewhere around $80 to $120 per consultation, and you should get a Medicare rebate if you are an Australian resident or a citizen, and that should save you close to around $42 to $43 depending on where you are. Now, in terms of private health insurance, these strongly vary by the providers and the kind of perks that you are after, but also get affected by which city and state you are residing. For me personally, this is around $110 per month. Now, if you are after any specialized treatments, the cost for them will vary significantly on what sort of treatment it is, which doctor are you consulting, but also will be relevant on what providers do you have in terms of private health insurance and how much can they cover. To give you a rough idea, dental treatment is super expensive here in Australia. And if you're looking for things like root canal, they can cost you as high as $3,000 to $4,000. And for just a simple filling, that could be somewhere around $200 to $300. Number 6 and the final category is the fun and recreation category. So one of the biggest expenses in this category are gym memberships. So gyms are really great for exercise and fitness, but they're not necessarily the best on the pockets. On an average, Australians are currently paying as high as $63 per month. But this value will significantly differ depending on what sort of gym you are after, what kind of classes do you want to take, and also how good their equipments are. For me, fortunately, this is free because this is covered by my office and my employer, so I don't have to pay anything for my gym. Next thing in this category are subscriptions. So these days, most of us have some subscriptions, be it movies or shows, sports, anything. So for us personally in our household, we usually have a Netflix subscription, which is about $19 a month. And the second one is the Kayo subscription for our sports, like cricket and football and AFL and everything. And that is about $35 per month. Now, if you're looking for places to eat out, a quick lunch would cost you somewhere around $15 to $20. A decent meal with family will be somewhere around $50 per person. And if you're sitting at a luxury place for a dine-in experience, that would be well over $100. If you're looking for some cheap options, particularly if you visit or live in Perth, I have created a full video on cheap eats in Perth. I'm going to link it up here. Next cost are grooming costs. So for men, haircuts are anywhere like $50 to $70, and for women, they are somewhere around $80 to $150 for a typical haircut, and it will be a lot more if you're looking to get some hairstyles or hair treatments. The next one in this category is shopping, and this is something that differs from person to person, and also how high-end brands do you prefer. To give you an example, a pair of jeans will cost you somewhere around $100. A good dress will be close to $100 to $150. So I really hope that this video has given you some idea about the cost of living in Australia and how bad has inflation affected our cost of living. Stay tuned for our episode 3 and the final episode, where I'll give you some tips and tricks of how to save some money and how to live in Australia on a budget. In the meantime, if you want to check out what are the pros and cons of life in Perth, check out this video up next.